And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Alicia, who had a near-death experience after being a victim of a crime, and today we're going to learn about it. Alicia, thank you so much for being my guest, and welcome.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
All right, if you don't mind, can we start on the day that it happened and go from there?
Sure. So I went to an ex-boyfriend's house after work. He had called me on my phone while I was leaving work and invited me over for a beer. And so I sat outside on my car. He came out to meet me when I got there, and we had a beer. It was a good conversation, and so he invited me in, and we went inside and had another beer. I was in the kitchen in our old apartment, and he had leaned down to give me a kiss over the sink where I was at, where I had just finished my second beer. And he leaned down and gave me a kiss, and I didn't do anything to insinuate, it was kissing time. He just came over and gave me a kiss, and I thought it was really sweet of him. He pulled away from the kiss, kind of enraged, and yelled out, "Why this love, this hate?" And he pulled my arms up he was a big guy. He pulled my arms up over me and dragged me into the living room, and he had a dagger laying on the counter in the kitchen. It was like a connected living room and connected kitchen. And so he had grabbed it off the counter, and in the living room, he stabbed me. It took all of less than a minute I tried to fight him, of course, and I wasn't able to get away. I didn't realize I was stabbed. It was just really hot, and I still felt, I couldn't move. But out of the corner of my left eye, I saw the dagger, and the blade was just covered in my blood. And that's when I knew that he stabbed me, and I looked up and I said, "Oh, dear God, please help me. I was stabbed." And then I blacked out. But when I woke up again, I was in the bathtub, and he had instructed me to take my clothes off, and he was trying to take my clothes off. So I lifted my butt in, he pulled my pants off, and then he's just washing the blood off of me. He put the dagger under my chin and told me not to die. And he called his brother to let him know that he had stabbed me. And so I had blacked out again at that point after that. When I woke up again, it was a different kind of awake. I wasn't really aware where I could see. Everything was dark and black, but I was a little bit aware of where I was at. And so it felt, I knew the EMTs had me in the back of their, truck. And the guys who had gotten to the call had been talking to themselves about a story that they had been talking about before they got my call. And it really put me off. And I felt like they were really unconcerned that I had been stabbed, and they weren't talking to me at all, just continue their conversation. And so I just felt like I didn't want to be around them or there, and I was going to just go. And then I heard that someone say that her pressure's dropping. And to me, that's when I felt like my NDE really fully began. Let's see, it was really dark, and I was in a bed in a dark room. I could feel things outside the room, outside the door, and kind of hear movement. I was just aware a little bit, but it was never any lights on, no nurses coming in. I was just waiting in a dark room for a long time. I could hear the door open a couple times and feel like presence or people coming in, and they had stayed in with me. And as the time passed, I could feel the darkness or their presence more like, like a person, like a being or a shadow. And so as time went on, they became people. And two guys were in my room with me in the hospital room. And one of them didn't have a shirt on. He was tall with long hair. And the other guy was shorter. I could make out that he was a little bulkier. And he stayed off in the corners, always on the other side. But I did feel the movement from them. And I could feel just their presence, because I wasn't always in consciousness, and it wasn't me just always watching them. I was just incapacitated in this bed. And the long-haired guy had come up and sat next to me while I was waiting in this bed. And I could feel his presence and everything, even though I'm not turning to like look at him or talk to him or make eye contact, because I really was incapacitated. And he stretches out his arm to me, and there's a cigarette that's lit, and I could see it coming in my vision. And the cigarette sitting up on his claws, that he had metal claws for hands, sharp, those were very distinct. And then it was a part of him. It was just a part of who he was, I guess. And I took the cigarette from him. And I remember smoking the cigarette in the hospital, and remember thinking, I don't even know where I'm going to ash this. I can't, there's no ashtrays in hospitals, wondering if someone's going to come in because they even smell smoke, and not knowing even where I was going to put it out. But I was kind of in and out of this consciousness. So I had smoked the cigarette, but then I was out again at that point. And so I'd come back to at another time, and this person or being had constructed many dozen steel rods or iron rods. I'm not sure what metal rod this was, because it was all one piece. They were all the same, and they're all really super long, like to the extent of the room. And they were all pointed directly at me all over. And it was just chaos, disorder, just spears, sharp ones. And there was one that was centered right in the middle of my head and my forehead, and I couldn't move at all. I couldn't turn my head at all because it was so sharp it would have pierced me. And I was terrified. I was completely frozen with fear and wondering, what's going to happen to me. I definitely felt imprisonated. I felt tormented emotionally, I guess. I mean, physically, I couldn't move, even if I wanted to. I was so afraid. That was just what I experienced. So I kept going out to unconsciousness, where it was just dark, and had come to where I was no longer in the hospital room or even in the hospital bed, even though I was still had me, my being. I was lower, under or deeper in the darkness, and was in a different place. And this place was a very big place. It was very open. Everything was all one piece, constructed what to me looked like cement. Just everything was just one piece. It's impossible to construct cement structures with just one piece, but this entire place was. And it had big open rooms, and it was also divided with walls and corridors, and it was really, really amazingly huge. I like to put you in the mindset of MC Escher, where you look at a picture of his where the staircases are going in and out, and it's just really overwhelming. And I know that's not a real image. And but if you can get that feeling, that is to me similar of what I experienced when I was in this place. It was really overwhelming and it didn't make sense. And it was just, there was lots of places to go. And I was immobile, and I remember being or laying in this big open cement room, and the person or being who had been sitting next to my chair in the hospital was there, and his buddy was gone at this point that I knew of. And it was just him and me, and he had come up. I could feel him get up and see him get up, and felt like a very demonic being was there instead of just a person with no shirt on and long hair. This being now had like no hair, and he was white and skinny and lanky, thin, I guess. He had his claw hand that was like that and wouldn't move, that was attached to his arm. His left arm was the swords. He had 3 swords attached, so it was no longer his arm, but they could move and be a part of him. And like his weapons, there were 3 of them, but they followed each other and moved with him, and they were long like swords. His mouth also had blades similar to his claws, but they were different, but they were metal and sharp, and his mouth opened really big, and it was dark inside, and his eyes were really big, and on the top in the middle of his forehead was an erect, and the image was very intimidating, and I could feel his intent. He just came at me where I was at, and at that point we had fought. I guess it was just fought with my intent, but it did feel physical. I could feel him, but I couldn't tell you like where it was rolling. It was just so intense, like a big wrestling fight, a grappling. I did grab his swords, even trying to keep him from wrapping them around me. And even though I knew they were sharp and cutting me, I was still going to fight. And it was just a lot of energy and really fast. I couldn't hurt him. To me, no matter how much pressure I put on him, like it felt bendy, squishy, I had no impact on him in the fight. But my intent was just not to stop. And at one point he had me in a hold where I was my back against his chest, and he had me done. I was wrapped up in him, and I could no longer do anything. But at that point, even I still wouldn't stop fighting, and I pushed my heels into the ground and just pushed all my weight back and trying to offset him somehow. Was really the only move I had. And he sunk his metal teeth in the back of my head, right in the base where I was pushing, and I could feel that, and still it wouldn't deter me to stop fighting, regardless of the fact that I just couldn't win. But at that point, he had become blind and somehow lost his vision, lost his sight, and he had become enraged. And I could feel him, I was released, and he had scrambled around this open room, and I could feel him up against the far ends where the walls were, and just enraged that he could no longer see. But I was exhausted. I could just lay there and not move. And I remember looking up, way up, because everything in this place is just really big. But it was still there, and it was just this like street grate. And instead of looking down through a street grate that you would, I was down at the very bottom looking straight up at it. And through it, I could see lots of, like a dozen or so of these real small, like black soul-like creatures. They were just beings, very dark, and there were many of them, and I could just feel them looking down at me through the grate. and watching what, I guess, this fight that I had with this demon. And there was nothing that they did or no movement. They just were witnessing, just watching. And then I felt my head turn over, and it was like a slow turn. It was a heavy turn, and you could just feel my head turn over. And I look at the other side of the room, and there's the steps that go up into a stairwell, kind of designed, kind of shaped as large, big steps. And they just went up, and there was a little light at the top just shining through so I could just see. And down one step at a time, I could see a child come down, and he stopped all the way at the bottom, and he just came out a few steps and just looked at me. And he was a small boy with blonde hair. I could make him out. He had soft, like cotton, like white, soft clothes. That was just also one piece, a shirt, like jammies, I guess, a pants, and a long sleeve shirt. And he had no fear, he wasn't alarmed that he was there. He just saw me laying there. And I just knew that he was going to help me, that he was going to be able somehow to help me. And so he turned around at that point and went back up the staircase. And again, I was just immobilized. I was just tired and exhausted and just could lay there. I could feel the cement and the openness of the room. And time passed, and I had gotten up and walked over to, it was like a half cement wall where you could lean down and look over. And again, you could feel it. It was big. And I look over and down, and there's another huge open room with just corridors and just massive continuation that I could see of this place. Like if I were to jump down off it, I would have fallen and fallen and fallen. It was just a massive. But still, I can make out what I saw. And on a corridor that was going through, and the end of the area, it was a big, huge, open, real ancient looking, real big, open archway, I guess. And there was a corridor that you could only walk on a corridor. If you were to get off of it, you'd fall down into the openness of this place. So it was the only way you can go there. And on it was a metal cart on wheels, and there was a man, old looking man, I guess I could just see his back. He had on old leather apron, I guess. Lived and worked in hell, I don't know. And he was pushing this cart, and on the cart was the demon that I had fought. And he had been cut in half from, I guess, his navel down. He was just his upper torso. He had been removed of his weapon, so he no longer had his blades on his hand, and he no longer had his swords on his arm, and his teeth, the metal teeth were gone. His mouth lay open and wide, and it was just big and black, and his eyes were just also dark black, And he no longer had an erect. It was just, instead he was wrapped in this clear orange plastic looking bag, I guess. I don't know. It was clear, and it came up to the top. And kind of like you would wrap a gift, at the top it was closed up here, and the leftover of the orange bag had come up and shot out, and it looked real shimmery from what I could see. And he was being rolled through and going to wherever they were taking him. And so I turned at that point back to the room that I had been in, and I guess you could call it laying or waiting. I was just there and exhausted, just completely exhausted. At that point, I felt or heard to me felt like a helicopter of the sound of whirring and whoosh whoosh, and it was real intense, and it was woo, 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 and I felt myself go up, and I knew I was leaving. I felt myself go up in this feeling and the sound. And so at that point, my experiences kind of jumped around a bit. I went to different places in spirit form, I guess, and experienced different things. And so the continuation at that point would be that I was laying in a room, and it was a dirt floor room, but it was like a home, someone's home. And I was being like cared for because, again, I was like immobile. I couldn't move. And I was waiting. I could feel time pass, and kind of like in the room in the hospital where you could feel energy, movement while you're waiting in a room, similar to that. But again, it was all feeling. And so I couldn't like see anyone, or no one was talking to me, kind of like. And so I could feel a changing of, I guess, interaction with where I was at, and there was distributions of weapons where I was at, like secretly. And I was transported, I guess, again, to a different area, a different place, because I could feel myself, again, laying immobile in a different place. I could hear these people talk. I couldn't understand what they were saying. It was like different language. But I felt cared for. I was tended to, and I was not afraid. But I remember just feeling laying there and immobile. I had moved again after that, and this time when I could move, I could feel movement, like I was moving myself. I wasn't being transported or being moved, and I was in spirit, like, because the movement was different. It was everything about it was just different, I'll say, and so that's why I call it spirit. And so one instance, I was in an egg. And this was after I had been moved and laying still in these other places. And I was in it, looked like or felt like an egg. It was like a shell of an egg, and it was about enough size for me to stand up in and move around. And then on one side there was a small square window, and then on the other side there was a small seat that was built into it, and I could sit down. I remember being able to stand up and just move around, and I could look just out that window if I looked up and peeked out, and I could see I was out in space, and it was all blackness. And again, it was just continuation of time, because to me, I felt like I was in there for forever. I could see the stars way out. I knew I was in space, but space is so big, there's nothing out there really. You're out in nothing. And I could feel movement. And hard to explain. I do remember, sitting in there and looking out the window and wondering if I really am going to be in here for forever. A little sad about that. And then I went into another experience where I was in an ocean of a raging storm. I was in the middle of this raging storm, and there was the intensity of the lightning and the thunder and the rain and the wind and the darkness, because you're just relying on nature's light. You see things differently. But I did have vision of where I was at, and I was up in the sky above the raging ocean, and I was immobile. I could not move. I felt pulled out, and I was very afraid. Terrified, immobilized even with fear, but I could not move because I did not want to be there. I was so afraid. And just down in the water, I could see a being of man made of this ocean water, and the ocean had formed and tight curls of water, created this being, this man. And it was very distinct for me to be able to see him. In fact, I tried to draw him days after I had woken up from the hospital, and on the paper it just looked ridiculous, of tiny lines of pencils, just swirls. But I could see him in my mind so well. I'm like, can't you see this ocean water man? People are like, no. But anyway, I could make him out, and he was just coming up out of the water, swimming, doing a butterfly stroke, which is one where you swim with your arms out and you jump in, you go back in with your head first in the water and your arms stay out. Well, I guess your arms come in. But anyway, it's a type of swimming move that he was doing, and he was right in the middle of it where he was just coming out, and we had made eye contact from the distance that we were at, which was pretty far, and the storm was ongoing. And he was in the waters swimming, and we made eye contact, and he looked at me, and I could feel just the intensity of just my fear and the power of him, and what he was. I don't know how to describe it. It was just, the best word I can use is powerful. He was extremely powerful. And that was it. There was no other, like, oh, he had intent on me, or I was afraid of him. No, I was just in fear, of intense, great fear. And the intensity of my surroundings. And so that image really lasted all of just a split second. And after that, I was away from that. I was no longer there. But it stayed with me and impacted me so intently that those few seconds, just like eternity, felt like forever, and was very impactful in the understanding of what that time felt like. The intensity of the few seconds with this image was also just as great in a different way. And so I changed now to another image where I am in spirit form, moving one with the wind, very quickly, very free, very energetically, no worries, just completely free, and take that word and all that implies, of traveling just as wind. And the setting in this scene was a desert with mountains in the back, and a setting sun over the mountains, and the sun was creating spectacular sunset image of colors. The colors were so movement and blending, and the intensity was indescribable. It was just pure joy to be able to see this and experience it. It was just beautiful. And as spirit, I guess I took it for granted because I didn't think anything of it. But when I come back to describe it, it was like, whoa, this was so... It was an experience also of this big place of peace and no fear, and it was joy and contentment. And through the desert, on the base of the mountains, I guess the foothills of the mountains, I see an asphalt road coming out through the desert, and I'm intrigued with this road. It comes out pretty far, and I'm pretty far away, and I see a motorcycle on the road, and I'm like, oh my God, is there a dog on that? And I zoom in just immediately in my spirit flight. I'm immediately just so close up and just feeling the movement and watching this Springer Spaniel I see riding a motorcycle in the road in this desert form, and he's so fast, and the wind's blowing the hair through his ears. And, he's a beautiful Springer. He's got trimmed, he's well groomed. His ears are long. His tongue's hanging out. He's got sunglasses on. I'm not kidding. His paws are just on this motorcycle. And it's just an image of, again, just split second, but it was the image and the feeling of this joy of, it was just so joyous and awesome. Again, the split second I saw and felt this, and that was all that I had experience of that, and it was over. But just like the other scenes. It was very, very impactful and always just stayed with me. And that was really the only glimpse of, you get God's love like that. It was awesome. It was special. Let's see what else. So anyway, I had these crazy images, and I woke up from the hospital, and I had this, put my hand in the back, and I could feel where I was bitten in this fight with this demon, and it was dried blood. I had a necklace on me when I had been stabbed, and I also felt this dried blood, and I could peel pieces of my necklace off, and it just disintegrated around me. I had been washed at that point. I remember being washed by the nurses. I remember brushing my teeth, cleaning me. And I was moved, I believe. I think I was in ICU or something. I had been seen by a doctor, the one who I guess did the surgery, because he looked familiar to me. And the rooms were different in ICU. They were like sliding glass doors, and you can kind of see out. And when I had woken up, there was a clock on the room. I could just remember watching this clock. There's really nothing to do. And the clock never changed. It was always 5 to 1, always 5 to 1. And it was so annoying to me to always be in this time frame in the ICU. And the doctor had come in, and I remember the students had come in. And I asked the doctor, are you the one who did this to me? And, well, fixed me with a surgery. They had exploratory surgery. And he said, yes. And I said, thank you for saving my life. And he's just like, yeah, well, the students had come in to take these tubes out of me where I was bleeding, and they didn't really know how to do it, and it hurt a lot. Anyway, he had helped them, and it was just, I was overwhelmed with gratitude. And I had gotten moved to the 4th floor of the hospital. And I remember in the wheelchair being pushed through the hospital, the pictures on the wall, seeing all the nurses. And I remember some of these nurses that had tended to me when I was in a coma, and I remember fighting with them. And I felt bad that I had done that. And I had been moved up now to the 4th floor of the hospital. It was my first night, and I had a roommate. And this roommate had underwent, I guess, emergency gallbladder surgery. And her girlfriend had stayed with her all night on the bed. And all night they slept. And no nurse had come in all night to check on me at all. I remember I had gotten up myself and to go to the bathroom. And I had gone in and was able to go in and go to the bathroom. And the door had shut on my area on my back where I had been stabbed, and it hurt so much. But anyway, I jump ahead. I do want to note when I had woken up, I had 2 spirits with me. This was before they had moved me to the 4th floor. One spirit was a small white dog, and this dog was on the bed with me. And this dog had little fleas on its nose, and I remember seeing these fleas jump around. My friend was in the room. And I told her I have to give this dog a bath. And I was so tired, just talking was hard, but she laughed it off and said, Alicia, she thought it was funny. The other spirit that was with me was a big man in a big black trench coat and a big black cowboy hat. And he had sat on a chair next to me in this room, just sitting there with me. And my mom was at that point in the room with me, and she was turning off the TV in the room to the hospital. And she said, Alicia, do you want me to turn the TV off? I said, I don't mind, but you need to ask this guy. He's watching it. She said, Alicia, no one's there. And I said, yeah, he's watching TV. Do not turn off this TV until you ask him. It's rude. He's watching TV. And I'm arguing with her, and she turns to this invisible chair and says, sir, can I turn off the TV? And he says, you turn it off. Those 2 spirits are with me. And anyway, I also had a number 7 carved into the palm of my hand. And my brother at this point was with me. And I showed him my 7, and it was very straight lines. It had a line through the middle of it. My mom said it was a German seven. That's how Germans made their sevens. And my brother said, well, that's a sign from God. Seven is God's number, or something like that. And he was a Christian. And I had not, gone to church or anything like that at that point in my life. So I didn't understand what the God, Christian was, but I said, oh, okay, wow, because I had woken up from all these other images that I saw and experienced. So for my brother to say that was God, it kind of made me feel a little calmer. But for 3 days after I had woken and found the seven on my palm, all the skin on my hands shed. I could peel them. I could rub my hands together. I just have dry skin peeling off of my palms for 3 days. And each day and time that went by to the end of the third day, the seven had faded and was gone. Usually, I don't know if that's how wounds heal. Never experienced shedding on my palms again since, especially for 3 days' time. And the seven had been gone by the end of that third day, and there were 3 raised lines replaced on my palm. So it was disbelieving for a lot of people to hear and see that, but to me, it was very impactful, such as the images that I saw on my NDE. I also had continued crazy kind of experiences in the 4th floor room that they had moved me up to. So I had my roommate with her girlfriend sleeping on the bed, and I had gone up and gotten to the bathroom, and the door had poked me in the back where I had staples, where my wound was. My wound was pretty big. And it hurt, but it didn't bring me to the floor. I was able to get back all the way to the bed. And again, I was alone. There was no one ever in there. And I laid in bed, and the night was just forever. I could smell smoke. And I got up again and walked with my IV, line to the end of the room where there was closet doors, and they're easy to open. All you had to do was open a door, and inside you'd find a closet, but I could feel heat through them and could smell smoke, and I was very alarmed. I walked to the door, wondering if I should tell someone or if I was just, hallucinating, but I felt very worried about it, and I look out the door to the hospital of my room, and there's just no one there. There's no lights on. My roommate is sleeping with her girlfriend in the bed. I turn back to go walk to my bed, and I'm laying in bed wondering why the lights are off and why there's no one there and no one's checking on me. And I get up again at one point, and mind you, getting up and doing all this is exhausting. And even walking to the bathroom, I don't know how long that took. And walking to the door and back, I don't know how long that took. So this time I went up and walked to the window, which was the left of the room. And I opened the curtain or look out the window, and it was all black. And the scene was not what you would see out of the hospital, or you wouldn't see. I saw a city, but it wasn't the city where I was at. And it was all dark. There were still the skyscrapers, I guess, those tall buildings. And there was open areas, and an open area of these buildings was just the water had rushed in. There was a Navy ship down there. And I saw these white shooting lights going through the sky. And I had no idea what those were. And there was, I looked way down, and I saw men in uniforms, all black, and helmets and weapons. There was a war going on outside, and I could see this massive war, and I was terrified. And I wondered, when is someone going to come get me? Why am I being left up here? We're being under attack. And it was very real. I could see out this image. There's no one in the hospital. It's vacated, and I go back to my bed, and I'm just, well, I guess I'm going to have to wait here to be taken, or what's going to happen to me. I could barely even move. I was so exhausted, and I'm waiting in my bed, and I had, at some point, had taken, I guess, form of spirit. I was out in this image, And I was in a spirit form because I was up in the sky and I was overlooking a building, and there was family praying to me to take their child, a little girl, and I couldn't take her because I was spirit and I wasn't really there. And she had fallen all the way down. I remember looking at her and seeing her fall. Hi. And it was really sad, but as a spirit, I felt love and concern, but there was nothing I can do. So these images were really impactful for me. Being in the bed in the hospital, I did hallucinate a lot with the drugs and go in and out of a lot of consciousness. I had another experience that was very impactful to me, where I was in a desert, and I was, I guess, in a tavern where you can feel like the desert walls were up real tall. I just don't know what word to use to describe them. And we were walking through this path in this desert, and I was following people, and there was a snake. I could feel a snake around, and so I'm grabbing the snake, and I wake up. I'm in the hospital bed, from hallucination. But the snake was the symbolism of it, because when I realized, I called for help for the nurse to come help me because I had a snake in my bed from this image that I woke up from. And he comes out and he gets his gloves on and he's masked up, and he grabs my snake, and it's my IV line. And I just grab his arm and I laugh, and it's hilarious. And he thinks I'm just out of my mind, which I probably was. And it might have been a hallucination, but it was very impactful to be able to laugh. And coming out of something like that with those images and my NDE and the continuation of it, it was really hard. But that's the extent of my NDE. I guess I couldn't really add to that so much, but that's the end of that.
Well, thank you for sharing your NDE with us, Alicia. During your NDE part, do you feel like it is, or it was, as real as you and I talking right now?
No, it was different because, I would say I was more impacted by the images of the NDE than I'll probably have a hard time remembering our conversation tomorrow, honestly. But the feeling of it was very different. It wasn't a normal experience or like a dream that you would have in a bed. It was different.
So you're saying that it was more real than our reality here?
Yeah, it was so impactful. It was all I could even see or think about. And anything that happened to me in my life, I was always trying to place it to my NDE. I mean, I had so many other visions, one of them I was actually saved at the very end when I remember ultimate wake up. I don't know, it's just experiences, but coming back, it took a lot to come back. I kept coming back and going again. But those little things that I kept remembering was always highest, they came in most important, I guess. It was always first and foremost. I don't know how to explain it. How
do you think you changed after your NDE?
Oh, after my NDE, how did I change? I don't know if I really changed. I was added to the experience of the NDE, kind of adding insult to injury of being stabbed. Picking my life up after that was really difficult, and the NDE impaction made it 10 times more difficult, because I had to maneuver in society and life and the day-to-day grind, and so that was very hard for me to look at. But inside, I felt the same. I felt who I was. Who I was regarding with society was very impacted because I could not reintegrate, I guess. I could not really communicate very well with others. So I felt the same, but I felt like everything around me was very, I was always in transition, always very fluid. If I did say things to someone, it was very impactful, and I hated having that kind of impact on people, so I became very quiet. But spiritually, my growth is just always like, I'm still growing now, and my ND was it was 2002. So it was a long time ago, and I'm still learning from it, still trying to reintegrate, I guess is how I would describe it, and finding that love, because I know that love is the answer, and it really is, even though in mine you didn't see much of it, but that really is what I'm integrating to, is to be a better person. Even though I'm not like a bad person, it's a little complicated.
Have you changed spiritually, or have you become religious since your NDE?
I don't think so, because God, or my God, because I know a lot of people call God different things, and I'm very aware of the power of words and how we apply our actions in life. But like, he was always with me. Even as a child, my whole life, he was always right there with me. So my spiritual change really is my relationship that I have with him. I'm not so angry at him anymore for being left here. I felt very angry that I had to come back. I don't want to come back at all. I hated coming back. I hated having to reintegrate and communicate to other people. I didn't want to work on myself. I didn't want to give myself that good love that we need to give ourselves. So spiritually, my walk isn't with God, really, it's so much with other people, where I have to work on coexisting. Because I don't, it's hard for me. And so that's where I'm working. But yes, I am still working, and always going to keep working. I call it my spiritual gym, where I'm always just, man, I have some bad days, but you just got to get back in there and toughen up and get better and get stronger and work out. It's a continuation, it's a repetition. It's just your being. Who do you want to be? So I'm always working on who I want to be. Sometimes going to the church helps with that. Right now, not so much, but I'd like to get back into it, because that's a gym, quality of spiritual growth.
Have the memory of these experiences during your NDEs faded over time, or are they still with you today as they were when it happened?
No, but I would say the fading process took a long time, a very long time, at least over 10 years. The impact of NDE was so strong. I couldn't even make a decision without seeing if it related to anything that I saw, which, that's just not really how moving forward goes. I lost a lot of train of thought, but at the same time, I was getting to know myself. Everybody falls down, and some falls are uglier than others, and it's our jobs to pick ourselves back up. So for me, that did not take 6 months, a year. It took my lifetime to learn how to keep picking myself back up and learning how I want to be, who I want to be, and not just taking a back seat to what maybe others would want me to be.
Since it's been almost 20 years, do you have any new insights or conclusions about this?
About what I experienced?
Yes.
Yeah, like for me, my story about the fear I experienced, the peace I experienced, the fight I experienced, and I'm really big with on earth as it is in heaven. Did I go to hell because I'm a bad person? So I always thought, am I a bad person? The doctor, I didn't finish this part of the story. The doctor told me to be good. He's going to bring me back, but I have to be good. And so I was always thinking, oh my gosh, when I die, am I going to go to hell? Do I have to be good? If I don't, am I going to go to hell? I don't want to go to hell? Or was that hell my creation? Was that myself I was fighting? Was I fighting my own demons? But don't we do that in Earth? We fight our own demons. We create our own hells. We pick our battles. We go on vacation to paradise when it's time to go on vacation. You know, it's all still the same thing. So instead of fighting with myself, let's pick love in myself. Let's pick the joy. Let's pick contentment. So it's our choices. And so when I die, am I going to go back to hell? Well, am I going to choose to go to hell? Or am I going to choose to go on vacation? Am I going to choose, what am I going to do? So in my life, how my spirit NDE, what you want to call it, impacts my life, which impacts your life, because, you know, we're all bumping off each other and everything, you know. Anyway, so the way I see things now, because my integration is different, and it's been almost 20 years, so I still see a lot of suffering. I see a lot of people making choices where they're still wanting to learn, or they want distortion or chaos. And I believe peace comes from chaos too. We don't learn how to be good. We don't learn how to better ourselves, or we don't learn from our mistakes if we don't get up and try, if we don't get outside our protective four walls that we spend all our lives building. You know, we want to protect ourselves. We want a great home. We want fences. But what about us? What about our souls? What about, where are we going to go when it's, you know, when our time here is over and we can no longer have those four walls anymore? And that entire lifetime it took us to make this, where are we going to go when that's over? So that's the path I took. I wanted to learn about myself and not so much about what I was gaining materialistically on earth, I guess. But now I understand there is a fine line. You do have to build yourself up, and you do have to create a home, and you do have to work with society, and you do have to pick your battles, because everything does reflect. The work that we put out here, even though there's a lot of fear in it, and there's a lot of possibilities of it not working out, you know, worry, and so yeah, we have to build ourselves up, and sometimes that can be dangerous. We have to decide where we're going to go. We have to think and reflect. I mean, my ND was just a big, huge biography, I guess, of my soul journey, which is no different. We're all on the same journey, you know, we're all in this together. So the reflection of it we all can reflect on that and apply it to our lives, that we just have to get up and keep working and keep trying. And we just, even when we die, really, we're not going to stop in movement, in motion, in thought, in creation. We can stop creating what we have here because we're not going to be here anymore. Well, when I go, I want to know, what did I do here? Was it the best I could do? What else could I have done? What did I keep ignoring, or what was I turned away from based off of fear? Really, you got to ask yourself questions. You got to keep growing. So that's what I would take away from the NDE, which is a very simple story that you can take that away from anywhere, really. You don't have to die to learn that.
Well, after watching this video, people may want to reach out to you and ask you questions or connect with you. Are you open to that? And if so, how can they reach you?
Oh gosh, I'm really totally open with that. I'm not going to promise anything to anyone, but I feel if someone would like to reach out and say anything to me, to leave a comment where they saw this, and I'll try to keep up and respond to comments as I can.
Well, before we finish, can you leave us with one last positive message?
I don't know. My biggest thing that I have to tell myself through hard times, because everyone's got their own storm, and a lot of us are frozen in fear and don't realize our full potential because we're so powerful, and just changing our minds can create really, what if we are in the demon world still, and we're still fighting our demons even. Where are you in life? Are you in the desert and joy and all? You're just so in love and so joyous, and that's great and that's awesome. Peace derives from chaos, a saying that I have learned to tell myself during hard times in my walk, and taking joy in a bird flying over you on the worst day of your life. I'm still going to choose to take that bird flying over me that was beautiful and inspired me and made me feel great over that dark storm. I would rather focus on one small thing and just being a witness to seeing a bird fly over you is enough to change yourself in a dark storm. And if you can change yourself in a dark storm, and you can keep going, because that's what we do. Even after death, we just keep going. So you got to move through it, and you got to keep going. You got to work at it, and you'll have your own story. You'll be able to move through, find more stories to experience.
Do you have anything that you want to promote? Like, do you have a website or anything?
I have a horrible website. I'm a house call pet groomer. So shout out to dog groomers. I love my dog groomers now. I'm independent. So anyway, we're a tough group out there. I'm at looktwicepetgrooming.com. So anyone out there has a special needs dog, cat that you can't handle, that's too old or frail, that you would like a holistic approach or touch to, that can really understand and put healing hands on your loved soul partner. I mean, they're an extension, our pets are an extension of our souls, and everything happens for a reason, and what we do creates. So if you would like to give back to your loved one who helps you in your daily walk in life, I'm the groomer for you, because I work holistically on all kinds of dogs and cats of all stages, all kinds, all ages, socialized or not. I can help them and make them look great and feel great. That's what I do. That's my second chance. That's what I do. That's my walk, and it's trying to give back and be good and just keep going, even through our storms. So thank you so much. I mean, I hope I inspired somebody out there to keep going and change their mind, and that they can have a different approach and a different look, even after fighting our demons, that there's still a beautiful sunset for us one day.
What city are you in?
Hey, if anyone wants to pay for the plane ticket, I'm there. It's just another expense to me. Or bring your dogs here. I'm in Roswell, New Mexico. It's a great tourist place. I love this small little town. The alien theme is awesome. So yeah, that's where I'm at. Anyone on vacation, bring your dogs.
We could do a whole nother podcast just on Roswell. I've been there like several times, so it's a fun. I mean, I mostly just do the alien stuff downtown, but I was amazed that when I was there one time, there was a map on the wall, and you could put a pin in where you're from in the map, and it was a map of the world. And the lady said she just took all the pins out, and it had only been a week, and in 1 week there were pins from all over the world.
Yes, I love this little town. I've been a regular visitor since I was a kid. You know, I've got family here. And to me, it feels like it's the roots of my foundational to my growth. Like, this community here has helped me out every step of the way, and I've needed a lot of help on my steps and my growth. And this town is so little, it's big. Mm-hmm. Anyway, COVID came. There's been a lot of construction. Main Street's just beautiful and growing, and the town's growing, and I'm real proud of being able to call it home and staying here and share my story. It fits, so I had to do it. And thanks for having me on your show.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being my guest. We really appreciate you, and I wish you the best. Have a great weekend.
All right. See you out there.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.